Bolingbroke. I'm the Executive Artistic Director for the National Center for Choreography at the University of Akron. And I am delighted to be back with the Artist Talk series here with GroundWorks DanceTheater and speak to their latest commissioned choreographer, Pearlann Porter. Pearlann, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So glad to have you here and get to know you a little bit better, especially because we were talking little neighbors. Pittsburgh is not that far from Akron for those that are less familiar with Northeast Ohio and Pennsylvania geography. So it's great to be able to say, hey, wait, we're kind of in the same sphere a little bit.
Oh yeah,
Excellent.
we're closer than I thought.
For sure. And so I'm going to share some more information later on with how audiences can see your work with GroundWorks later this fall. But in the meantime, we want to get to know you. And as a way of beginning, I'd love to hear about your earliest dance memory, just to get a sense of kind of what your journey has been. Where did you start?
I started at this place called Dottie Locker School of Dance. It's like a strip mall kind of dancing
Yep.
school. And my mom went there, when she was a young girl, and Dottie Locker was her teacher, and Dottie Locker was my teacher.
Mm.
And I don't think I have any memory of my first classes. I was 3. I was really young, but I do remember um, there being like a little sticker that she would put on your right foot to help you remember what your right and your left foot was, and that being
Mm.
like a really big deal if you could be like the first in line for the sticker. And then I recently relayed this story to my partner John. I said we at the end of class we always used to sing the song "Turkey in the Straw," and I'm a weird kid, like I didn't really understand. I was super committed and like into it, but I didn't really understand. I'm like, how do you put a turkey in a straw? Like, how does that work out? Like that doesn't make any sense. This is such a nonsense song. Like I remember thinking this as a kid, thought this until like I was an adult. Like and I was like, "Oh, like hey."
Got it. Yeah.
So yeah, I was a kind of out there kid, but I had to have a matching tutu and outfit every day for class. I took it super seriously. There was kind of no question that my mom was going to put me into dance, not just because she did dance, but I guess there must have been something I was doing that made it super obvious that you need to dance.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, oh, I have this dancing school that I went to, kind of thing. But it was never not a question. Even as a little kid, people would ask me, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, dance. I want to dance. I want to dance.
Yeah.
And that has never not been true my entire life.
Mm. And then you went to school for dance at Point Park there in Pittsburgh. That's what brought you there. Um, I'm curious, how did you start to sort of expand or unlearn? I'm not sure how you describe it to find your way specifically into postmodern jazz, because that's perhaps very different from Turkey in the Straw and your tutu.
Yes.
Back
Uh,
day, day.
I relay this story a lot to my students
Mm.
because I think a lot of them have a similar story and they don't realize it.
Uh-huh.
Is that when I was studying dance, even before college, I went to a really elite dance academy, and there was, very skilled dancers there, and I didn't have a lot of natural talent. I didn't have
Mm.
flexibility. I couldn't turn. I wasn't a jumper. I could dive myself in the tap because that didn't need all those things, and
Mhm.
I had a lot of showmanship and I had a lot of passion. But classes in general were frustrating because I felt I couldn't really do the material like I imagined it, and I wasn't recognized at all, and it was frustrating. Like dance didn't love me back. That's the best way I can
Mm.
describe it. And um, in to supplement that or to help me survive, when I got home from high school or middle school or wherever, and I would go home before I had dancing school and before my mom come home from work, I would immediately throw my backpack down and move the coffee table out of the way and change into my dance clothes, and I would just dance in my living room for hours and hours and hours to the same mixtape, front and back and front and back and front and back. And things started, I was dancing to the same songs all the time before Spotify and all that. You know, I had a mixtape, a single mixtape, that things started to stick. I started doing the same things and developing dances to these things that I was able to do. And I really felt that I was dancing to imagined audiences in my head. I was really going for it and like expressing myself. And then I would go into dancing school and be like, okay. And I loved it, but it was not nearly as fun. And it was the stuff in my living room that was able to keep me alive and keep me going. And I didn't even think of that as the same thing because it just felt so insanely different. And I felt that was just like me dancing in my living room, and this is how I always imagined myself dancing. And then there's like dancing school. And when I went to college, it was very much the same thing. I didn't have a lot of talent. I wasn't one of the best dancers. I didn't get cast a lot, and I was getting myself into the studio super late at night and dancing to my music that I liked. And I was dancing in my way and doing things in the way that I wanted to do it. And it allowed me to just live and really move. And that's what had become of postmodern jazz. That's where that all started. That's me dancing the music, not choreographing anything, improvising till things just kind of congealed over time, growing up on MTV and seeing Michael Jackson and Paul Abdul and these dance videos that like were with the music. They were so sunk up with the music. There was no disconnect. It wasn't a performance. It was like an embodiment. And I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. That's like that's the dance to me. And not just something that happened on the stage to the music, but it was like playing with the music. And I remember like about 10 years after I had, or more than 10 years after I had graduated Point Park, I was really frustrated with my company. And I wanted to, like, I was choreographing. And I was like, how do I bring this musicality though that I can't figure out how to get my dancers to do it? How do I make dance that looks like how I feel? And I was like, maybe I'm doing this all wrong. Maybe I'm going to teach them how to improvise. What if I teach them how to improvise like I improvise? I literally took them to my living room. I was not at my space. I took them to my living room. I moved a coffee table out of the way. Now looking back at it, I was like, oh my goodness. And like I taught them how to think about the music like I thought about it. And I sat back and I was like, I'm never going to choreograph again. This is exactly what I've been trying to do my entire life. And now I can finally see dancers doing what I had been doing, I guess, my whole life. And it was this huge whirlwind, everything zooms in, aha moment. I was like, that's it.
There's so much in that anecdote that also pings up and consistently shows up in a lot of your material, both on your website and in other interviews that you've given. You brought up, the reframing of play instead of practice, and I like this idea of practicing play as you had described. Moving the coffee table aside and practicing in that way. And that sort of reframing it, that even with the influence of something like MTV, and also a student of that time when you're like, I can still whip out some of those music video dances, but that isn't always play because it can be very like mimicry. So how do you also like respond to it and then add, or as opposed to just reflect it back? And so I'm curious, because you kind of drop tap in there as like, oh yeah, I could tackle tap. That was something. But can you talk about your first like memory or response to music? Because that also feels like it's part of your sort of origin story as an artist.
I think it's huge. I have to preface, I don't play an instrument.
Okay.
I wish I did, but I never, I never longed
never.
for it. But like, of course, I wish I could sit down at a piano and just, like kill it. But I've always felt that what I was doing was music.
Mm.
because dance to me, as I was trained, was pirouettes, leaps, jumps, kicks, all these things I
Right.
really couldn't do. And, I went to dancing school, I worked hard, I love being in shows, but what I did in my living room really wasn't any of that,
Mm.
because that wasn't really what I did. And, so I would look at videos of Michael Jackson and Paul Abdul, who were huge influences to me growing up, and I recorded their videos in VHS, and I watched them, and I'd learn them, and I'd watch them over and over and over again, literally learning them. But I did them in my own way because I the way videos are edited, I learned really fast that, like, oh, that's not continuous, like that's not what would come next. I can't do that next, So it was very much me having to adapt and play with it, and because I wasn't any of these like skills kind of trick kind of dancer, I had to improvise
Mm-hmm.
what I did and make it work. And because I was dancing alone in my living room, there was no one to tell me I was doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to just react off a feeling. And if I went to dancing school for hours every night, I put in equal time at least dancing in my living room every day. I would
Mm.
look forward to going home. Can't wait to dance to that same mixtape I danced to every day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something about that studying myself, I guess. I didn't think about it like that back then, but looking back at it now, I guess I was. That
Mm-hmm.
I was just studying my own craft and I was making my own language that I didn't have words for necessarily, but the way I would react to music, the way I would play with it, I was developing my own practice in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started doing this much later in my career, like 20 years later, it was already all there. I
Mm-hmm.
went to dancing school, but I also went to my living room
Yeah.
and I did that as just as much. So I it's hard to be able to see how that happened. I think it happened out of necessity. I
Mm.
don't think I would have survived if I only had dancing school because
Mm.
that really wasn't satisfying in that way. I'm in the back corner and I wasn't one of the solos and I couldn't really do any of that stuff. And it would have been very depressing. And
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have just said, this isn't really worth it. Oh, that's a million miles away from me. But because I knew what it felt like, I knew what it tasted like to dance in front of these imagined audiences and just like loving it and just really opening up and full out performing, that I knew what it tasted like. I knew what that was. And I was just trying to find it in places that it didn't existed. I didn't know that that's what it would actually wind up being someday. I
Mm.
had no idea that that stuff I was doing in my living room was what I was going to make my career about, not what I went
It's
to
part of
college
the
for.
foundation. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I want to then also unpack improvisation as a dance making choice. Won't even call it choreography, but it is choreography. It does require craft. I would say, for maybe some dance civilians, they're like, don't you just, dance just happens. You just make it up, and you're like, okay, you don't know how much practice goes into that. And then, because I also, remember growing up with, some friends that we were in dance class together 6, 7 days a week, but we would go to school dances and they could not break open on the dance floor. Right. So it was like there was no foundation to just be and respond and listen. So I'm really curious, like, how do you teach improvisation, or how would you explain it as a craft?
For me, for my class, for my work, I try to reframe the dancer. And sometimes, and I say the word dancer like with huge air quotes because I think everyone's a dancer, every little kid's a dancer, everyone was a dancer at some point, and some people like stop doing it, but it's all still in there in a little kernel somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I frame improvisation as like, don't think of yourself as a dancer. Think of
Hmm.
yourself as playing with the music as much as the musicians are. And even if what you're listening to isn't jazz, you are going to jazz. And jazz not as a style, jazz as a verb.
Mhm.
And usually when I say that, that usually gets people thinking like, oh, this is not what I thought it was.
Mhm.
Because it's like improvisation is often used as a moment to show off,
Mm.
or like, show me what you got, last two counts of eight or something, just go. And it becomes this like kaleidoscope vomit of stuff. And
That's a
it has
technical
no
term,
form.
kaleidoscope vomit. Yeah.
Yeah, it has no form. It's just blah, just like I've seen aerials get whipped out, and I'm like, oh God, like there's so much because I think people feel that all that pent upness of things that can't get out otherwise, they want to look what I can do. I want to show you I got my moment. And improvisation is used as like this gigantic ego stroke moment.
Mm.
And for me, improvisation is very much not that.
Mhm.
It is listen to the moment. What does the moment ask of you? And this takes a huge training in ego reining in. Not what you want to do. What does the moment need? The moment that you're in. Can you feel the whole moment? The whole moment's not you. You're not the whole moment, and just what you listen to. The whole moment is the room and the people and the witnesses and the others and the environment and the time that you're in. The whole moment is something very big, that you get into. And then, what does this moment need? And the moment might need you to be still. Are you
Mhm.
okay with that? The moment might need you to leave. The moment might need you to do something subtle or something even repetitive. The moment might need you to take the reins. The moment might need you to deviate and do something completely different or offer contrast that is not what's going on. And I think that takes a lot of nuance and maturity to really get there.
Mm.
And I don't know really how that happened. I think when I, started really teaching improvisation, I had to look at, okay, I'm going to teach people how to move, but like they don't move in a vacuum. They're
Mhm.
moving in a moment. And, you can really like screw the moment sometimes. And it could just not be what needs to be happening because people are just taking the reins and they're just doing what they want to show off as.
Right.
And I think nothing put us in our place more is when back in 2011, the Pillar Project went to Paris, and I took the company to Paris, and we're dancing at this. The best way I could describe it, it's like if there was a jazz club that was also like a fight club, and it was like this old mirror factory, which sounds exactly like what you think it is. And it was frightening because it was free jazz, this angry, chaotic free jazz, and like my dancers were like, and like this, and I was like, and I turned to them and I'm like, and they had to dance on stage. Like we arrived there like to dance on stage, and they're just like, what are we going to do with this? This is not what we normally dance to. What
Mm.
like just completely stunted. And I was like, what does the moment need? And I immediately went back without hesitation. I went right back to the mantra. I'm like, what does this moment need? And I saw them go, order. It
Mm.
needs grounding, some stillness. I'm like, go. And they
Mm.
went out stage and did really beautiful, like sometimes they were with it stuff, but sometimes they would just be like, and the whole room that was like this went, the whole room stopped and just
Mm.
was captivated by them. And I was like,
Yeah.
a little light bulb went off in me. I'm like, that's really what it's about. For me, it's not just learning how to do moves, but how to consider your moment, how to feel your role in the music, how to make the music more interesting because you're there, because
Mm.
you're a visual component. Music's audio, you're the visual component. Why are you there?
Mm.
What are you doing that makes this more interesting? Why are you relevant? Is the moment better without you? Like, you better make sure that you're making it important that you're there and don't show off and don't take over and it's not about you. And so learning that is a big part of the improvisation for me.
Mm. Uh, there's so much in that I'm going to jump ahead because I feel the moment calls for it. I was very curious because improvisation can be, a kind of like selfish, sometimes even in postmodern dance. I've watched work and I was like, I think that was really interesting for the performer because they were living it, but it wasn't interesting to watch. And I am curious, since that can be such a solo process. I've seen a lot of solo improvisers like a Simone Forti. How do you also translate improvisation as a craft to an ensemble? Is there something that you particularly sort of bring around, or how it kind of creates that sense of everyone responding to the moment, but we're not talking about unison, which is the more conventional dance approach
Mhm.
to ensemble work?
I utilize something that I lovingly borrow a word from Savion Glover, who was a huge inspiration to me when I grew up, and I got the chance to meet him, and he's actually a gigantic personal influence that I got to know when I was younger. He has this word called improvography.
Okay.
And when I heard that the first time, that's his word, not my word, but it encapsulates absolutely everything that I love so much about what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's that it has structure, it has direction, it has organization, intention, plot, all of that. It might even have material to play with. And the dancers can learn that material, like straight
Mm-hmm.
out. The piece that I'm doing with GroundWorks right now, the whole end section is choreographed. They all know the same common denominator. But as the piece develops and unravels and they can play with it, things start becoming more individual
Mm.
and things start becoming more nuanced. And I just had a class today where I was telling my dancers about, I call this the electric slide theory, because anytime I'm at a wedding, I'm often asked to dance because they all know I'm a dancer, and that's like not what I'm interested in. But I will absolutely 100% run out there for the electric slide. And what winds up happening is that I know it so well that I don't have to think about it. Like everyone knows it so well, but everyone sticks to like what they know. And I'm thinking, oh, because I know it so well and because I don't have to think about it, I can mess with it, I can
Mm.
jazz it, I can play with it, I can dip out, I can come back into it, I can add something and deviate for a second and fall right back into it again. And I'm jazzing the electric slide so
Mm.
hard that people wind up backing up, and I'm often left alone by the end of it because I'm adding things and taking things away and adding pauses and all of a sudden like changing it up a little bit and doing it in a totally different style and coming back to the original. And I'm playing with it. I'm taking the electric slide as a toy and I'm going to play with it. And that's now what I think about choreography. So when I have an ensemble,
Mm-hmm.
you could have five people out there just doing whatever, and they could be listening to each other as much as they can, and they could super be paying attention to each other and trying to form something together. But it will be like it's kind of like watching the alphabet soup trying to make a word. Oh, come on. Oh, we can do it. We can do it. But
Oh,
like
you're just missing that
it's a lot
vowel.
of chance. It's a lot of luck. There's some parameters you can set to make things happen, sort of. But if you give them direction and
Mm-hmm.
clarity about certain moments, like this is where my job is actually, important here. I design like the framework of it and the blueprint of it, and I can give them ways to let it be more loose and organic. If by the end of it I disappear, that's I've done something great. Like I feel that like if you do something right, people won't know you've done anything at all. And
Mm.
by the end of it, I don't want to be seen. I want it to look like I'm just watching five or however many dancers just dance randomly on stage, and this beautiful moment is just unfolding because it
Mm.
can't possibly be choreography, but it can't possibly be improvisation either. It's
Right.
neither and both.
Mm. That before we talk a little bit more about your work with GroundWorks, we're still unpacking the Pearlann Porter universe and vocabulary. So I appreciate the shout out to Savion Glover and Improvisation. Tell us, what is the ellipsis condition?
The ellipsis condition is a state of being. And I have a little tattoo right here. Little brackets and dots, right?
It's got a visual.
It does. And it's about, like I said, everything I do with the improvisation is not about this is how you exactly do it, and these are the things you're going to do, like a technique or like prompts that are like trademarked to an idea. This is a state of being. And of all the jazz musicians that I talked to over the years, they talk about like this, being in the pocket or being in the groove or being in the zone, I think is, a popular way to talk about it. And it's like this condition that they can just slip into or that they live in or can, like, it's just something that they have. It's just this instinct that you build over time. Some people are born with it. Some people have to manifest it or, build it over time. But it is a state of being that you're in. And once you're in that state of being, you don't know what you're going to do. You know what you do, but you don't know what you're going to do. And that's a state of being of like, it's something that's unknown. It's going to go on for as long as it has to, and it is important, but it can't really be super defined until you're in it. You can't know until you're in it. If I could call this whole thing I do just dots and brackets, I would. It feels a little like Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince, kind of simple thing, So I didn't want to quite do that. But me and my partner John Lambert, he's a poet, a dancer of the page, also a musician himself. And this is the state of being that we exist in. And when you're in this state, when you're in this understanding of what the moment needs and how you move and what you do and how you can contribute, it's absolutely effortless. It feels like water. It feels as much as like making cereal in the morning or just doing whatever. It doesn't feel any separate from you. I don't feel like I'm performing now. This is a dance. Everything is a dance, or nothing's a dance. It winds up being just like this is something that it's a condition I'm in, and it is how I am, and you just develop this sense of yourself, this state of being. So it's not like I'm working out of a method or a technique or a particular, set of rules or anything like that, because in jazz, there is no rules. You'll find someone that has rules and you'll find someone right next to them that'll break them and say, well, that's not, that. Who says, so what? That's not what it needs to be. So anyone that says like, well, this is jazz and that's not jazz, like to me, that's not jazz. Like jazz can be anything you need it to be and want it to be in that moment. If you're acting authentically and you're creating your own thing, it's about innovating. And I think that has always made sense to me. So I didn't want to develop a technique or a method or anything like that. It felt more like a condition. I'm in this state of being. And I operate out of that myself. So does John. We are this. We have it. It's like a condition, like something that is just almost personally inflicted upon ourselves, like by ourselves. And I teach people what their condition would be, how they react and respond, how to train their intuition, how to get them to trust their instincts, and to develop those instincts that they can improvise in the moment of music, but they can also improvise through their life.
Yes. Thank you. The ellipsis condition. And you mentioned the Pillow Project, but tell us about the space upstairs.
Oh, The space upstairs, I've heard a bunch of descriptions of it from other people um, over the years, and they refer to it as like this old Brooklyn loft from the 1970s. What we do at the space feels a little bit like what went on at Judson Church in
Hmm.
in the postmodern movement. Um, it's and I don't say this hyperbolically, and I try not to say this without any kind of ego, but it's magical.
Mm.
It is um, more often than not we're dancing without a rehearsal or a class or a show. We're dancing because we want to. We're playing with ideas. We're witnessing each other one at a time, maybe two at a time, under like some saturated light in this beautiful warehouse gallery loft space. It's 4,000 square feet of hardwood floors that at night we're the only ones on the whole block. There's no one else around. And we create these magic moments that every now and then we invite audiences to. Like once a month we have a full blown jazz happening that's been going on for 17 years called Second Saturdays. But it's the really beautiful jazzing till dawn nights where half the people in the room are sleeping on couches, and then there's some people just dancing or talking and creating and in this mental space. It's it's hard to describe it if you've never been there. And if
Mm.
you've been there, you don't have to describe it. It's it's a weird place of um I've been there the longest, and it's hard for me to say it. So
Mm.
I think that's kind of evident. But
But
what
having heard some of your story and your journey, it sounds like this is the next imagination of what those living room sessions were for you after school, but like even larger.
I have a lot
Um,
of coffee tables now.
yeah.
I got a whole fleet of coffee
So
tables
many,
now.
so
I
many.
I rearrange the room all the time,
Yeah.
because it's 4,000 square feet. I've got tons of couches and coffee tables and lamps and all that. And every time I find myself moving coffee tables around, there's like this little like moment that I have of here I am. I never imagined this happening,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still happening. It's still going. And I think if like you really embody an idea and a state of being, how could it not keep going? If you're going, it's going. And you
Mm.
find a way. And if you don't find a way, you make a way. And it just is perpetual. And that's I I it doesn't it feels like I'm doing nothing at all. It's the hardest work I've ever done in my life
Hmm.
in many ways, but in other ways I feel that it's just as much effort to sleep or sit down or walk downstairs. It's the same thing. It's completely a state of my being. And
Mm.
I walked into that space in 2006, and it was this old big room with nothing in it but a box of Christmas decorations from the people that own the warehouse below it, which is called Construction Junction. And I was just looking for a space, like a real cool warehouse space for a show. And I said, they took me upstairs. I thought it was going to be downstairs in the warehouse, but they were going to show me space. And I said, what's up here? And it's like fluorescent lights and a green wall, and it's like no furniture, no nothing, nothing, but dust footprints to a box of Christmas decorations. And I said, what goes on up here? I'm like, oh, nothing. We don't do anything up here. Like, you want to do your show up here? I was like, and I can't possibly say what that feeling is when you step into something that you don't understand but makes sense to you.
Mm.
I There's no word for it. I wish there was.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I knew in that instant maybe I wasn't gonna leave. I knew that there was something more. I could see the room. I couldn't visualize it, but I could see the room for more than it was. I saw potential I couldn't imagine,
Mm,
and I've never left. Like, we stayed there ever since,
mm.
and the room has become a curation for the inside of my mind. And every person that's ever been up there, their spirit lives on and feeds the inspiration of every dancer that comes after them.
Mm.
So it is a beautifully haunted space, in the best possible way. No scary ghosts.
Yeah.
The ghosts really love what we do, and you're never alone in the space upstairs.
Mm.
And I don't say that as a joke. It's
That's
you'd,
powerful.
you'd have to be there to understand.
Yeah.
You
I
can't.
mean, okay. So second Saturday is in Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
but we're going to talk about upcoming performances with GroundWorks here, and uh, should also take a moment for our friends that are tuning in live. If you have questions for Pearlann that you want to drop in the chat of your modality for tuning in, we'll be sure to get them to us and we'll incorporate them. Don't worry, we have plenty of questions to also talk through, but we want to make some space for you as well. There was another set of like terms in describing your work. I love how dance artists find ways to describe their work because we dance because it defies words. So I'm really curious then in talking about projected light specific concert work. And can you tell us more about what can we expect with something like that?
Well, I don't have a like TM kind of work description for it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have like an actual name for it. But the way that I do a lot of site specific work
Mm-hmm.
outside Pittsburgh a lot. I'm a big fan of downtown Pittsburgh. I've been downtown Pittsburgh since I've been a student, in college. So I know downtown Pittsburgh like intimately well. So I love me some site specific work. And the what comes to mind is how I describe this as a genre would be light specific work.
Mm.
It's um, all of my pieces since I've been a student and college studying dance have always been like really lighting heavy. Like,
Mm.
this one has made a piece that was maybe like 5 minutes long with 80 lighting cues in it. Oh yeah, they were all really relevant. It was all really specific, but
It was
like I
all
would always
necessary.
go just like ham on lighting because lighting to me was a part of the dance. The
Mm.
lighting of like blackouts, I'm the queen of having like 20 blackouts in a piece because like I needed to see the passage of time or like I want a blackout so I make something else happen here. I love me some blackouts, like I love like all that kind of stuff. And my lighting, once I got projectors at the space, we started playing with all kinds of luminography and all kinds of like projection ideas, and like we really like went crazy about it. If you want to check it out, look at our Instagram page. It's bonkers, it's bananas. But I wanted to get more specific with my lighting, and the one thing after I started doing improvisation, and I felt like, oh, this is what I want to do with choreography. Yes, yes, I'm finally there. My production aspects weren't quite like what I wanted. Like I always had this
Mm.
struggle with I imagined something with lighting and shadow and color that I just couldn't do. Like it was just impossible for me to get a lighting designer to really understand and not even understand like the theater just would not have the capabilities and our lighting at the space, we are like duct tape and popsicle sticks at the space upstairs. So like as cool as it is, like we are very low tech. But when I got all these projectors, that started like opening my mind of like, oh, I can be really specific with light. And I happen to befriend over the years who I still work with a bunch of people who went to art school for video animation and
Mhm.
motion graphics. So I'd be like, I need a bar of light like this, and I need light that does this, and can you make the light move this way and make this side this color and this color? So we started dancing in fields of light. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, cool, but it's all frontal because it's projection, right? And I hate me frontal light. I hate frontal light. Like, it's just like very, like, I never like frontal light. I like down light. I like side light, not frontal light. But projection was like what it was. And I really don't know what, I can't remember the moment that this happened. I was like, what if we put the projectors at the side and treated them like lighting units? And I'm
Mm,
like, what if I just project a band of light and the dancer just can come in that and then step another foot forward and be in the dark,
mhm,
so they can make
mhm,
themselves
mhm.
disappear. And I can have them step into one color and take one step back and be in another color and step one back and be in another color because the audience is not seeing the thing projected on the side, the back. They're just
Yeah,
seeing it hit the dancer from the sides. So the dancer's in the blackness, but all of a sudden this dancer is illuminating themselves in like this bonkers way. Like, what am I looking at? And then
yeah,
couple that with, I can make these, lighting units, projectors, do whatever I want. Like, they don't have to just be a light with a gel in it. I can make graphics that are moving. Like, I can make stars appear. I can make bands of light keep moving. I can make anything. I could make someone disappear by fragmenting them into nothingness. I could literally make them evaporate. I'm like,
mhm.
oh wow, wait a minute. Like, and this, I've only touched the tip of the iceberg with this. I feel that I personally am a pinky toe of my foot into what this is going to become because I've only done a couple pieces now that have utilized this.
Mm,
And already I'm thinking like, what if I had like 20 projectors? Like now I'm getting ridiculous.
yeah.
But I'm doing all this stuff the most analog possible way. Photoshop, making JPEGs of things, making it scroll in Premiere, rendering out a video footage by 4 laptops and 4 projectors, and we all hit the space bar at the same time. It is
Wow.
analog, but it works.
Mhm.
And there's something about all the years of doing really basic stuff at the space upstairs that has made me think like, well, I don't need a computer program to do this, and I don't need fancy tech to do this. I can make this happen in the most unrealistic but practical analog way, and
Mhm.
that's it's more low tech than you think.
Cool. Oh, well, and I appreciated that because I think it also paints a lot of different pictures about what an audience might expect. And I'm curious with such highly trained dancers as those at GroundWorks, and you came in with this arsenal of tools and ideas and things to play with. And what was that like? Where did you start? What did you learn along the way? How was it for you?
Well, awesome, awesome.
Awesome's good.
I've worked with other dancers before, other colleges, things like that. It was wonderful. It's always great to work with new people. I have a new group of students that comes through me every year. Um, but the people I work with at the Pillow Project already, like, it's baked into the cake. They know they're getting into something crazy. Like, I could sit
Maybe
down with
some
them and be like,
graduated students. Yeah.
yeah, people that have worked with me as a teacher, and then they wind up working with me later after they graduate. So I could come up to them and be like, okay, listen, I got this idea. I don't know how to describe it, but just trust me. And they're like, they'll just go with it. So I was slightly concerned for half a second to be like, I'm going to work with people who don't know what this is, and I'm going to be rolling into their, rehearsals with projectors and all this kinds of crazy stuff, and it's a lot to dance in projected light for 4 hours, and it's intense. And the way I craft a piece, it's a lot of like just forming things over time, like a cloud. And I was very fortunate that one of the dancers at GroundWorks, Matthew Saggiomo, was someone that worked with me with the Pillow
Mm,
Project and was my student when he was a freshman
an
through senior
insider.
year at Point Park. So Matthew's been in a piece, the very first piece I ever did with this projection idea at Point Park, and was in the part of this crazy rehearsal process that I had when they were sophomore at school. Yeah, oh my God, that was so long ago. But they were a part of that process and were already like trusting me with the rest of the cast. Okay, we have Pearlann as a teacher. She must know what she's doing. I guess this works. And we formed this really awesome piece. So when I rolled into GroundWorks, Matthew was great at being like, this is fine. It's okay.
Don't worry,
I've
everyone.
done this. It's
Got
okay.
this.
Like, I get
Yeah.
it. Like, I can imagine what this is like. I've done this. It's a lot. Trust it. Like, and it was wonderful to have someone there for the first time that I've taken this work. For the first time ever, I've taken my projectors outside of working with the Pillow
Ooh.
Project to another company and doing this kind of idea. And it's kind of out there. It's hard to describe. It's hard for me to like explain it without really seeing it. And another component of this is working with live music. And Matthew has also worked with the live musicians that are a part of this because I've worked with them for many years. He worked with them for many years at the Space Upstairs. It was all very beneficial to have sort of like an ambassador to like
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
bridge the
Yeah,
countries
and the dance
here,
person.
and to help
Yeah.
usher in this idea.
And that's super exciting for GroundWorks and for GroundWorks audiences that you're doing this experimentation, that this is the first time that you have brought this practice with the projectors on another company. Let's give a shout out properly to the other collaborators. Who are the musicians that are coming through? Anyone else you've been playing with or brought to the party?
Yeah. Well, one of my conceptual collaborators, my partner John Lambert, he's writing poetry. He was in all the first rehearsals that we had with GroundWorks. He's writing the poetic expression of the piece. He's the one that I go home every night and we talk and blueprint it out and write it down and chalk it on our chalkboard walls behind me. Like we're writing all these ideas out and figuring them all out. He's cliche, my rock, but also he's my harshest, poker and prodder of like the ideas, and we really
Mm.
craft these things together. I might be in the studio and explaining the ideas to everybody, and it sounds like it's coming out of my head, but it's because I get to go home over breakfast and over lunch and over dinner,
Mm-hmm.
I get to live in it with John. One of the musicians that's a part of this is PJ Reduta, and PJ is one of the musicians and one of the artists that I've been working with the longest at the Space Upstairs and with the Pillow Project. I've been working with PJ since 2007, and it's been a wonderful journey to have had someone there for such a huge part of my career. He also is an accompanist at Point Park University, so he's accompanied many of my classes, especially when I was developing the language for this postmodern jazz that I do in the ellipsis condition. He has worked out of the Space Upstairs since 2007. We did so much early improvisation together and late night jazz sessions together that there is no question. There is 100% we understand what each other means. I could just look over and give a gesture and he knows what I mean by that. Like it's a place that we can go to that's a little beyond language, which for what I do, that's really beneficial. And he, as a full-time job, plays for dance and has played with me for now going on almost 2 decades. So when I said, I need you to come into GroundWorks and I'm going to set this whole piece up, but then I need you to throw this music onto it, we came up with like a little bit of a framework and a baseline,
Mm-hmm.
but I had zero question that he would be able to just roll in, and I already imagined what he was going to do. I couldn't have imagined it, but I could imagine it. I trust it. Like I was like, it's fine. Don't worry about this. It's going to be something amazing. It always is. He knows what I want. I guess it's like having this fantastic sous chef that they just get like what you're trying to
Yeah.
make. And I get also the privilege of, for the first time, working with PJ's partner, Renee Copeland. Renee's got a totally new arsenal of ideas of digital and guitar and flute and saxophone, and plays, I don't even know how many instruments Renee plays actually, and brought all these sounds that I don't usually get to have when I play with PJ. PJ's a percussionist, and I mean, I could use percussionist in air quotes too because it's many other things but percussion, but it's wonderful to have the two of them like figuring things out the way John and I are like figuring things out on this end, and these two groups of people just collaborating and working with each other. When we were in Cleveland making this piece and we'd all go home, to where we were staying, it just never ended and never stopped, and it's been a dream. It's been awesome,
Mm-hmm.
this whole experience, because it's inspiration from every single direction. It's everyone I'm working with, everyone that's involved in the project. everyone that's a part of this is inspired and excited, and we feel like we're playing. We're
Yeah.
playing.
There, well, and what a treat for Northeast Ohio audiences. There are 4 opportunities to get to experience this live, twice in Cleveland on September 30th and October 1st at 7:30 p.m. at Playhouse Square's Outcult Theater, and then twice in Akron on October 7th at 7:30 p.m. or October 8th at 3 p.m. And just based on the description that you offered with all the different layers for the music, I'm really excited to see that in the night stage at Akron Civic Theater, which is kind of more of like a small jazz club environment and space that it's very rare to see dance there. This is becoming more and more so a Akron home for GroundWorks since the space opened just a little over a year ago.
Okay.
So I'm particularly excited to see this work in that space. I wanted to give you an invitation before we sign off because you've done so much reframing dance the way dancers approach movement, who calls themselves a dancer. I loved the language also on your website that you're challenging the ideas of what is dance, who is a dancer, and how can dance be experienced. And so my invitation before we sign off is, do you have any recommendations or reframing for dance audiences to receive and respond to the moment that you described, that maybe they aren't being invited to join you out on the floor for the electric slide, but there is something that feels very palpable. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a sort of guidance or recommendation.
One of the most common things I hear from people when they ask, like, "Oh, what do you do?" or like, what's your job?" or whatever, and I say I'm a dancer or an artist, and like, "Oh, I wish I could be a dancer. I wish I was an artist. Oh, I always wanted to be an artist. I always wanted to be a dancer." And I immediately come back at them like, "You are one. Like, you might not be a producer, like you might not be creating art, but your art is in your mind, how you see. And your art is how your perspective is, which is influenced by your whole life and all of your experiences and everything you've ever done and everyone you've ever met and every place you've ever been and everything you've ever seen makes you look at something in such a unique way that no one else can possibly see it that way. And your vision, your perspective is your art. And that's beautiful. And you're creating art every time that you watch something, and every time that you engage in a great conversation, and every time that you improvise how you're going to season that meal, and every time that you think about how you want to arrange the items on your coffee table, and every time that you decide how you're going to experience your day, or how you choose to view something, or what you choose to appreciate, that's all art. And I think there's this idea that art is away from you, and art is something that's beyond you, or that's very elite, or only if you've trained in it you can do it. Because I've heard so many people say, "I wish I could dance. I wish I could dance." I'm like, you did. When you were 2, you did. I've never once met a 2-year-old that's like, "Oh, no, 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 I do not dance. I'm okay."
It's so true.
Every little kid dances, and at one point you decided, or someone told you to stop
Yes.
wiggling around and to fold your hands and to pay attention and be still. But that little dancer is still in there. That artist is still in there. And everyone, even the most unlikely person you can possibly think of, has a interesting way of doing something, has something they appreciate. They might keep it totally to themselves, but there is something that they look at in a way that no one else looks at. They see something in a way that no one else sees. They can appreciate something in a way that's unique to them. That's art. That's art. And dance is just a way to physicalize it without language, without having to put paint to canvas, without having to come up with the words for it, without needing to play music or to know an instrument. You are the instrument and the musician and the artist all at the same time. And any way that you move, whether it's getting up to brush your teeth, it's kind of shuffling along, to go to the bedroom at night, or you're dancing to music and just tapping your foot, or you're hearing music and your thoughts and your mind dances, or how you change your focus to the other side of the room, or how it just makes you shift your weight. That's dance. It's all dance.
Yes.
It's all dance.
So fabulous, and such a good reminder, generous reminder about how we engage. And it is that response to the moment. And there is a special opportunity, particularly in Akron, that I'd be remiss not to share if people want to practice the art of watching and noticing. And even if they don't produce or say it out loud, you can make it a day of dance and see not only Pearlann Porter's work with GroundWorks DanceTheater at 3 p.m. at the night the night stage at the Akron Civic Theater. Got to get that right. And then you can see Dance Cleveland's presentation of the Gibney Dance Company at E.J. Thomas that evening at 7:30 p.m. Blocks apart, you can find a beverage or a dinner in between, and you can, for the very affordable price of $40, you can see both shows. So I hope that people will take you up on that invitation to practice, whether they see once, twice, or all 4 happenings in Cleveland and in Akron. Pearlann, thank you so much for your generous spirit and demystifying a little bit and opening it up to remind us all that we're all dancers.
Yeah. Some of us are on the stage and some of us are in the audience, but it's all dance.
Love it. Bye, y'all.